The great hall of the Galactic Council was brighter than ever, its walls made of pure crystal that reflected light in 1,000 colors, yet the atmosphere inside was heavy with pride and mockery. Delegates from hundreds of alien species filled the long tables, their voices buzzing through the air like a swarm of insects. At the far end, a small group of humans sat quietly, dressed in simple dark uniforms, their faces calm but unreadable. They were the last to speak that day, the final ones allowed to defend humanity's place in the galaxy. Around them, the aliens whispered and laughed, their eyes full of arrogance. The council leader, a tall creature with silver skin and long tendrils for hair, rose from his chair, his glowing eyes fixed on the humans. "Your kind," he said with a slow, mocking tone, "always claims to seek peace, yet every world you touch ends in conflict. You are too emotional, too dangerous, too human." Laughter erupted across the chamber, sharp and cruel. Some slammed their hands on the table, others hissed and clicked their tongues in agreement. The sound was deafening, like a storm of contempt that filled every corner of the room. The human ambassador, a man with dark eyes and a calm expression, did not move for a long moment. His hands rested on the table as if holding back a storm inside him. When the laughter began to fade, he stood up slowly, his chair scraping softly against the shining floor. Every alien eye turned to him, waiting for his anger, his defense, his words of war. But the man's voice, when it came, was low and steady. "We came for peace," he said. "We came to listen, to learn, and to live among you as equals. But peace, it seems, is not wanted here." The room grew still, the air itself heavy with tension. The ambassador's gaze swept across the chamber, meeting the eyes of the council members one by one. There was no hatred in his eyes, only disappointment, the kind that cuts deeper than rage. Behind him, the other humans stood quietly, each one knowing this was not just a meeting. It was the end of something far greater. The council leader smirked, leaning back in his chair. "You think you can walk away from the galaxy? Without us, you are nothing. You are alone." But the human did not answer. He turned without a word and began walking toward the massive crystal doors at the end of the hall. The sound of his boots echoed through the silence, each step louder than the last. The other humans followed, their heads held high. The laughter tried to rise again, but it died in the throats of those who mocked. Something in the human silence felt different this time, too controlled, too final. As the doors closed behind them, the light in the hall seemed to dim. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then, from the upper rows, an alien delegate whispered, "They will be back. They always come back." The council leader smiled again and called for the next agenda, waving the moment away as if it meant nothing. Yet deep down, even he felt an unease, a faint chill crawling through his chest. Outside the grand hall, the humans walked in silence through the golden streets of the council world. Around them, alien crowds watched with curious eyes, some whispering insults, others pretending not to notice. The human ambassador looked up at the vast sky filled with ships and traffic. "Let them laugh," he said quietly to the officer beside him. "Words will not change their hearts." The officer nodded. "What will?" The ambassador paused, his gaze hardening as a cold wind swept through the streets. "Silence," he said. "They will understand silence." When the humans' shuttle lifted off from the planet, no one in the council paid attention. Ships came and went every day. But high above the world, the shuttle joined a formation of other human vessels waiting beyond the moon's shadow. Their engines burned silently as they turned toward the blackness of space. On the command deck, the ambassador gave a simple order. "Cut all transmissions. No more words." The screens went dark, one by one, until the fleet vanished from the council's network entirely. From that day forward, the humans were gone. No trade, no messages, no presence in galactic channels. Some alien news sources mocked them again, calling it the tantrum of a dying species. Others wondered why the human fleets had disappeared so completely. A few small voices whispered that perhaps humanity was not retreating, but preparing. Back in the council hall, the leader stood by the window overlooking the stars, his reflection cold against the glass. Let them go, he said to himself. The galaxy will not miss them. But even as he said the words, he saw something strange. A human symbol burned faintly into the surface of the departing world, visible from orbit, glowing with quiet defiance. It was a simple mark, a single handprint, pressed into the soil where the first human steps had once touched alien ground. No one understood its meaning then. But in time, they would. Because that handprint was not a farewell, it was a promise. The day humans walked away was not the end. It was the warning before the fire weeks turned into months, and the galaxy began to forget the quiet departure of the humans. The council's chambers once again filled with laughter and pride, as if nothing had happened. They told stories of human arrogance, calling them a primitive race who could not handle rejection. News screens across alien worlds displayed bold headlines: humans withdraw from the stars, the weak leave in silence. Most believed it. The powerful believed their own lies. Yet far beyond their reach, on the cold edge of known space, something silent was happening. Human space had gone dark. All transmissions had stopped. The massive trading stations that once pulsed with light were now empty shells, orbiting planets with no signals, no ships, no life. Merchant fleets from alien worlds that dared to approach never returned. Those who escaped told strange tales, of vast shadows moving through the void, of ships that appeared without warning and vanished without light. The council dismissed these stories as superstition. They are gone, the council leader declared. Let them sulk in their corner of space. The galaxy does not wait for the weak. His words echoed through the chambers, met by applause and cheers. But even as he spoke, reports continued to arrive from border colonies. Traders missing, satellites losing contact, ships turning up adrift with empty decks. The council demanded explanations, and scientists offered excuses: solar storms, pirate attacks, technical errors. Yet deep down, a small seed of unease began to grow. The silence was too complete, too deliberate. It was as if humanity had sealed itself away from the galaxy entirely. On the distant planet Vorath, a mining colony that once traded daily with human outposts. The workers stood by their scanners watching the same patch of dark space for weeks. Once, there had been hundreds of signals, human cargo ships, exploration vessels, communication beacons. Now there was nothing. No pulse. No radio hum. Just emptiness. One night, the colony's main engineer noticed something odd. A faint signal flickering for only a moment, like a heartbeat. He tried to trace it, but before he could lock onto it, it vanished. Later, the same night, every system light on the planet dimmed for 2 seconds. No one could explain why. Far away, in the deep corridors of the Council's security headquarters, a young analyst studied the data. Her screens were filled with red markers: ships lost near human space, probes unresponsive, distress calls that cut off mid-sentence. She presented her report to her superiors, trembling slightly. "It's not random," she said. "Something, or someone, is removing all signs of life near the human border." The older officers laughed. "Do you think the humans have suddenly become ghosts?" One sneered. "They wouldn't dare strike us." But the young analyst didn't laugh. "That's just it," she whispered. "They're not striking. They're erasing." Word of her report never reached the council floor. It was buried, labeled as a system error. Still, rumors began to spread among the lower ranks of the military, whispered during night shifts and patrols. "The humans are building something," some said. "They're preparing for war," others answered. "They just don't want us to see it." But no one could prove anything. The border around human space had become a black wall, a zone where no light returned. Even the strongest sensors failed to penetrate it. It was as if the stars themselves refused to reveal what was happening beyond. On one alien news network, a famous host laughed as he spoke to millions. "Let them hide," he said proudly. "Without trade, without allies, they'll eat themselves alive." The audience clapped and cheered, unaware that the very next day that broadcast station would go silent. The planet hosting it would lose power for 37 minutes. When systems came back online, the host and his studio were gone. The feed showed only static and faint audio, like a deep heartbeat echoing through the void. The council ignored the incident. Technical malfunction, they announced. No threat detected. Still, one by one, more incidents followed. Cargo ships near the human border reported seeing strange glows in the dark, massive structures like black mirrors hanging between stars. When approached, the glows would fade, leaving nothing but the cold emptiness of space. Pilots began refusing assignments near human territory. Insurance rates for those sectors tripled. And then, the galaxy's largest trade route, the Arion Path, suddenly shifted course. Dozens of planets that once depended on human trade now faced collapse. Prices rose, panic spread, and smaller species began to question the Council's leadership. For the first time, cracks appeared in the unity of the great powers. In a private meeting, one alien general said what others were too afraid to voice. "They are waiting," he whispered. "Humans are waiting for something." The council leader slammed his fist against the table. "Waiting for what? They are nothing without us." But as he spoke, he looked out the window toward the stars, and for the briefest moment, he thought he saw movement. Something vast and slow sliding across the blackness, blotting out entire constellations before fading again into the dark. That night, he could not sleep. The next morning, the council received a sealed report from one of their last surviving scout vessels. Inside were 3 words that chilled every heart that read them: "They are watching." And yet, even then, the council laughed once more, hiding their fear behind pride. They had no idea that humanity's silence was not weakness. It was the calm before the storm. The silence of a hunter before the strike. Months had passed since humanity vanished from the galactic stage, and the council's arrogance had started to return. Their halls once again echoed with prideful speeches and empty laughter, but whispers still moved quietly in the shadows of every world. Something was wrong. Something deep and heavy lingered in the silence left behind by humanity. Outer colonies near the human border began to report strange disturbances, but most were ignored. Then came the first real sign. An entire colony on the edge of Sector Delta 4 went dark. It was a small mining world, home to over 40,000 workers. The last transmission from the planet was a brief scream, a flash of light, and static. When rescue ships arrived, there was nothing left, no bodies, no debris, not even dust. It was as if the entire colony had been erased from existence. The council dismissed it as a mining accident, claiming the planet's unstable core must have exploded. But one officer, a reptilian commander with scarred scales and tired eyes, was not convinced. He had fought beside humans once, during the border wars long ago. He knew their patterns, their silence, their patience. "This isn't an accident," he muttered to himself as he studied the wreckage reports. "This is a message." His words were ignored. Higher officials told him to stop spreading fear, to remember his place. But within weeks, 2 more colonies vanished. This time, they left something behind. A single, burned message carved into the hull of an abandoned space station. "We asked for peace. You answered with insults." The words spread like fire across the galaxy. At first, many thought it was a hoax, pirates trying to stir chaos, or rebels framing the humans. But then merchant convoys began disappearing too, whole fleets swallowed by the black void between stars. Survivors, if any escaped, spoke of giant shadows, massive ships that moved without light, without sound, without heat signatures. They appeared suddenly, blocked all communications, and then everything went silent. When the signals resumed, the convoys were gone. The council convened an emergency session, their chamber filled with fear and confusion. "We must act," one alien shouted. "If this is humanity, they are violating interstellar law." "Impossible," another delegate argued. "They couldn't build such power alone. They have no allies, no trade, no resources." The room fell into chaos as accusations filled the air. Some blamed pirates, others blamed rival empires. But no one dared to say what everyone secretly feared, that the humans had returned, and that they were no longer the same. The council leader stood and pounded his staff against the crystal floor, silencing the noise. "We will not be intimidated by ghosts," he said. If the humans wish to scare us, let them try. We are the Council. We are the law of the galaxy. His words drew applause, but it was hollow. Fear still lingered. After the meeting, he sat alone in his private chamber, staring at a hologram of the empty human sectors. Once filled with colonies, now they were completely dark, ringed by strange anomalies that sensors couldn't explain. "What are you doing, humans?" he whispered, his voice trembling for the first time in years. On a distant border world named Cartes, a small military outpost detected something moving through the void. The commander, a young insectoid officer, stared at her screens as a blip appeared, growing larger each second. "It's a ship," her lieutenant said. "But there's no identification code." "Broadcast a signal," she ordered. "Let's see who it is." No reply came. The object kept moving closer. "Try again," she said, her voice uneasy. The technician obeyed, but before he could finish the transmission, the lights in the control room flickered. One by one, the monitors turned black, replaced by a single glowing human symbol, an open hand surrounded by a circle of stars. Then, just as suddenly as it appeared, the signal vanished. When the lights returned, the object was gone. The commander immediately sent a report to the Council, but the message never reached them. It was intercepted, deleted, erased as if it had never existed. The next morning, Cartes was silent. Not destroyed, just gone. The planet itself had vanished from the star maps, replaced by empty coordinates. Panic began to spread. Across the galaxy, governments started demanding answers. Fleets were mobilized, probes were sent, and diplomats whispered of war. But the humans never responded. Their silence was louder than any declaration. One by one, alien species began withdrawing from the Council, fearing the same fate. Yet the Council's pride refused to break. "They cannot defeat all of us," the leader said confidently. "They are bluffing." But even as he spoke, new reports arrived. Space stations turned to ash, communications blackouts across entire regions, planets covered in strange electromagnetic storms that erased all technology. Every attack was clean, calculated, surgical. Not one civilian target was ever harmed. Only military worlds and command centers vanished. That precision terrified the galaxy more than any act of war. It meant someone was in complete control. On a cold night in the Council's capital, a fleet admiral who once fought against humans stood alone on his balcony, looking at the stars. "They are not angry," he whispered to himself. "They are disappointed." Behind him, the skyline glowed with towers of light and the hum of alien life. But far above, in the dark between stars, invisible eyes were watching. Humanity had not spoken a single word since the day they left. They did not need to. Their silence had become their weapon. And soon, the entire galaxy would understand that the humans who once begged for peace were gone. What remained was something far older, far colder, a force that waited patiently in the dark, ready to teach the galaxy what it truly meant to be ignored. The Galactic Council grew desperate as the reports of disappearances increased. Fear was spreading through every sector, and the illusion of control that once held the galaxy together began to fracture. The Council's leader, now haunted by sleepless nights, called for an emergency meeting that would last until dawn. The great crystal hall that once shimmered with pride now felt like a tomb of arrogance. Delegates shouted over one another, their voices rising in panic and confusion. "We must send fleets toward human space," one alien barked. "We need to know what they're hiding." Another delegate hissed, "They have already warned us. Do you not remember what they said before leaving? They will not talk, they will act." The room fell into chaos as every voice clashed, but one thing was clear. The silence of humanity was beginning to crush the galaxy's confidence. Yet, in the middle of that chaos, the Council leader stood and raised his hand. "We cannot appear weak," he said, forcing calm into his voice. "We will send probes and scouts, not armies. If the humans are planning something, we will expose them before they move." His words earned hesitant approval. Orders were sent. Hundreds of stealth probes were deployed across human space, each carrying the most advanced scanners in the galaxy. 4 days, nothing happened. The probes disappeared one by one, their signals vanishing as if they had flown into a black hole. But then one feed came back. The control room erupted in surprise. The probe had survived long enough to send an image. A massive ring structure floating around Earth, stretching thousands of kilometers, covered in strange blue light. The readings showed energy levels that no known technology could match. "It's impossible," whispered one scientist. "That much power could destroy a star." Before anyone could analyze further, the feed went dark, the probe destroyed in an instant by an unknown force. The council ordered silence about the discovery, labeling it classified. But secrets never stay buried. Within weeks, rumors spread across the galaxy. Rumors of a human weapon so powerful that it could erase entire fleets without leaving a trace. Some species began to panic. Trade routes collapsed as merchants refused to travel near human sectors. Governments built shelters underground. Even the strongest military empires started pulling their fleets closer to home. Still, the council continued to deny the truth. "Humanity cannot build such things alone," the leader said publicly. "It's a myth spread by cowards." Yet, when he was alone, he stared at the star map in his chamber, watching how the darkness around human space seemed to spread wider each day. Scientists were summoned from across the galaxy to study the strange energy waves that were now reaching nearby systems. They found that the signals carried a pattern, a pulse, steady and rhythmic, like a heartbeat. Some claimed it was just interference. Others whispered that it was a warning. One alien physicist, trembling as he presented his findings to the council, said, "This frequency is not random. It's being broadcast deliberately, like a countdown." His report was never released. He disappeared that night, and the council declared his research destroyed by accident. But fear could not be erased. Across the stars, independent colonies began forming their own alliances, preparing for the worst. They built defenses, reinforced stations, and whispered prayers to whatever gods they believed in. A few brave captains even tried to cross into human territory again. None returned. The only evidence they left behind were fragments of transmissions, static-filled voices screaming of black ships and burning skies. One message, recovered partially, contained the chilling words. "They are not human anymore." On the capital world of the council, the mood turned grim. The once bustling streets now emptied early. Citizens stayed indoors, avoiding the night sky as if the darkness itself could watch them. Even the media stopped mocking humanity. No one laughed anymore. Deep inside the council's intelligence wing, a secret meeting was held among the highest-ranking officers. One of them, an old general with shaking hands, broke the silence. "We can't win if it's them," he said. "Not anymore. The humans we knew, they were builders, explorers, dreamers. But what's coming now, it's vengeance shaped in silence." The others didn't reply. They all knew he was right. The council leader entered, his face pale and tired. "Gentlemen," he began, "this is no longer about pride. This is survival. We must prepare the entire galaxy for war." But the word war sounded hollow. Against who? Against what? Humanity had not declared anything. They had not demanded surrender. They had simply vanished, and now, they were everywhere and nowhere. Still, the council pushed forward, building massive fleets, drafting soldiers, and constructing fortresses on border worlds. But every night, the sensors showed the same thing: movement in the darkness, too large to measure, too fast to follow. Some said it was the ghosts of the missing. Others said it was the humans, gathering. On the 100th day after the probes vanished, something happened that the galaxy would never forget. Every major communication channel across the stars flickered for exactly 7 seconds. No one knew where the signal came from. It was faint, like a whisper carried through static, but it was clear enough for every translator in the galaxy to understand. A single human voice spoke just 5 words. "You laughed. We listened. Remember." Then the signal ended, and the stars near human space dimmed, as if the universe itself was holding its breath. The council sat in silence, no one daring to speak. The laughter that once filled their halls was gone forever. In its place stood only fear, and the heavy realization that the humans had never left at all. They had simply gone quiet and started counting down without warning. The silence that had blanketed the galaxy shattered like glass. It began on the edge of the Council's territory, in a small outpost orbiting the twin suns of Orlan's Reach. The night shift crew was half asleep when their sensors went wild. Massive energy spikes appeared from nowhere. No heat, no signals, no identifiable drive signatures. Just a sudden distortion in space, as if the stars themselves were being pulled apart. "It's a malfunction," the officer said nervously, but his voice trembled. Moments later, the blackness outside their viewport twisted. Something vast emerged, shapes without light, without color, like the night given form. Then came the first flash. Beams of white light, pure, blinding, and silent, cut through the outpost, slicing it into pieces before anyone could even scream. The entire station disappeared, leaving nothing but dust and static in the vacuum. The signal reached the Council headquarters minutes later. Within hours, 5 more colonies went dark. There was no time to react. Across the outer sectors, the stars began to blink out one by one, their light swallowed by invisible shadows that devoured entire systems. The galaxy had never seen such terror. Fleets scrambled, admirals shouted orders, defense grids activated, but nothing worked. The attackers didn't communicate. They didn't respond. They struck like a force of nature, silent, coordinated, merciless. The Council held an emergency broadcast to calm the public, claiming it was a rogue faction or a natural phenomenon. But no one believed them anymore. Too many had seen the black ships with their own eyes. The ships were enormous, each one larger than a moon, moving without engines, powered by some unknown energy. Their hulls absorbed every scan, every light. They carried no flags, no markings, just the faint blue glow of humanity's symbol on their undersides. The same open hand surrounded by stars. The galaxy froze in horror. "It's them," whispered a commander aboard a border destroyer. "The humans. They've returned." Within seconds, his ship vanished under a beam of light that melted steel like wax. All contact was lost. The news spread faster than light. Panic erupted across entire sectors as planets tried to evacuate. Fleets launched in every direction, but the humans were already there. They struck military worlds first, shipyards, command centers, weapons factories, destroyed cleanly and completely. Civilian planets were spared. Humanity was not seeking conquest. They were delivering a message. On the Council capital, fear turned to chaos. The Grand Chamber was filled with shouting. "We must beg for peace," cried one delegate. "No," roared another. "They're monsters now. There can be no peace." The Council leader slammed his hand against the table. "Enough. We are not animals hiding from ghosts. They want war, then we will give it to them." He didn't believe his own words, but pride was all he had left. Within hours, the largest fleet in galactic history assembled. Tens of thousands of ships, armed with the most advanced weapons known to science. The fleet stretched across the stars, a wall of power meant to crush anything in its path. They positioned themselves near the edge of human space, forming a defensive barrier. The admiral in charge, an insectoid veteran with 6 glowing eyes, gave the order to hold fire until visual confirmation. The tension was unbearable. Minutes turned to hours. Then, space rippled. Hundreds of dark shapes appeared on the scanners. Too large, too many. They weren't coming through hyperspace or any known route. They were simply there. The humans had arrived. The alien admiral watched as the void filled with black ships, sleek and silent, their surfaces covered in strange blue runes that pulsed like veins. "They're not broadcasting any signals," his second officer whispered. "No warnings, no demands." The admiral swallowed hard. "They don't need to." The two armadas faced each other across the stars, silent and still. Then, without sound or movement, the human ships ignited. Thousands of brilliant beams erupted in unison, cutting across the void like lines of fire. The alien fleet's shields collapsed instantly. Ships were torn apart before they could return fire. Whole squadrons disintegrated, vanishing in blinding bursts of light. The aliens tried to retreat, but their engines failed, jammed by invisible interference. The humans' technology was beyond comprehension. Every countermeasure, every weapon, every defense, useless. Within minutes, the greatest fleet in galactic history was reduced to ashes. The council leader watched the battle from his capital's command center, frozen in horror. "They didn't even speak," he whispered. Not a single word, as if to answer. A faint transmission appeared on the central screen. Static filled the air before a single line of text appeared, written in the human language. "You mocked our peace. Now learn our silence." Then the message vanished, and the stars beyond the window turned red. Dozens of burning ships fell through the atmosphere of the capital world, leaving trails of fire that lit up the night. Cities trembled. Alarms wailed. The people ran to shelters, praying to gods who could not hear them. The council's guards tried to protect their leaders, but even they were frozen in despair. Humanity didn't invade, didn't occupy, didn't conquer. They simply destroyed the instruments of power, leaving the people untouched. It was punishment, not annihilation. Across the galaxy, systems went dark one after another, each strike as precise as a heartbeat. Command centers were erased, weapons silenced, communication arrays burned. No words, no warning, just cold, unstoppable justice. By the time the attack stopped, nearly half the council's military strength was gone. Entire sectors lay in silence, not from death, but from the fear of speaking. No one dared send a transmission. No one dared say the word human. In every corner of the galaxy, the same realization settled like ice. The council had spent centuries mocking humanity for their emotions, their compassion, their hope. But now, they finally saw the truth. Those same emotions had limits. And when the last ounce of patience ran dry, even kindness could burn the stars. The galaxy had never known fear like this. After the human fleets appeared and vanished just as quickly, the silence that followed was worse than the destruction itself. Entire sectors of space were empty. No signals, no trade, no music in the data streams, only cold static. The council, once the voice of all civilizations, was now fractured and silent, its members afraid to even meet in person. The capital world lay in shadow, its towers dimmed to conserve power, its skies filled with ash from the fallen ships that had burned during the night of fire. The people whispered stories of ghosts, of human ships that appeared in orbit above their planets and then disappeared without firing a shot, as if watching, judging, deciding. Panic became a daily reality. Governments began to collapse. The council leader, once proud and full of arrogance, now looked like a broken creature, his once silver skin turned pale and dull. He sat in his office surrounded by empty chairs, delegates who had fled, resigned, or gone missing. Reports poured in every hour, each one worse than the last. "The outer colonies have surrendered without a fight," one aide said. "Entire fleets refuse to leave their docks." Another whispered, "Half the systems in the southern sectors have declared independence. They no longer recognize the council's authority." The leader said nothing. He only stared at the map projected before him, a galaxy divided, collapsing under the weight of its own fear. For the first time, the council leader realized the truth. They had not been attacked by an enemy, they had been judged by something greater than themselves. Across the stars, remnants of the defeated fleets drifted in silence. Wrecks of alien warships floated near shattered moons, their crews gone. Rescue missions found no survivors. Instead, they found something worse. Etched into the metal hulls of the destroyed ships were messages written in perfect human language. "You called us monsters. You mocked our peace. Now you will learn what silence means." The words burned like scars across the wreckage, proof that these attacks were not random. They were deliberate, precise, and deeply personal. In one shattered command cruiser, a single survivor was found, a reptilian captain, trembling and half-mad. When the rescuers pulled him from the wreck, he kept whispering the same thing over and over. "They looked at us. They didn't speak. They just looked, and then the stars went dark." The recordings from his ship's black box showed a horrifying image. a massive human vessel, shaped like a blade, drifting silently before them. It did not fire immediately. Instead, it sent a pulse, a soft, rhythmic sound like a heartbeat. Then everything turned to light. When the footage reached the council, even the most hardened generals sat in silence. No one dared to breathe. The galaxy had reached its breaking point. Alliances crumbled. Species turned against each other in panic. Some demanded surrender, others demanded revenge. The council leader, desperate to restore control, summoned what remained of the military for a final stand. "We will fight," he declared, though his voice shook. "We are still the rulers of this galaxy. We cannot let humanity destroy everything we built." But his words fell flat. None of the admirals met his eyes. They all knew the truth. The council's fleets were no longer armies. They were funeral processions waiting to happen. Still, they obeyed. Massive defense grids were activated around the capital world, planetary shields strengthened, weapons primed. Billions of soldiers waited, staring at the night sky, knowing death was coming. Days passed. Nothing happened. Then, on the seventh day, the sensors detected movement. The stars flickered. Dozens of dark shapes appeared in orbit, human ships, silent and motionless. The alarm screamed across every city. "They are here," shouted one operator. The council leader ran to the balcony overlooking the skyline, his eyes wide with horror. The ships hung above the planet like shadows of gods, massive and still. No attack came. Instead, every screen across the planet suddenly activated, hijacked by an unknown transmission. A familiar face appeared, the human ambassador who had once stood before the council in peace. His hair was gray now, his uniform simple and unmarked. His voice was calm, steady, and heartbreakingly human. "You mocked us when we offered peace," he said softly. "You called us dangerous when we showed emotion. You called us weak when we walked away. Now look at what your pride has built." The entire planet fell silent, every being watching in frozen awe. The ambassador continued, his tone filled not with anger, but with sorrow. "We did not want war. We wanted respect. You could not give that, so we took back our silence. And in that silence, we remembered who we are." Behind him, Earth appeared on the screen, beautiful, blue, and surrounded by thousands of glowing rings of light. "We are done speaking," the ambassador said. "From now on, our silence will be your teacher." The transmission ended, and for a moment, the sky was still. Then, every human ship fired a single beam of white light, not toward the planet, but into the sky itself. The beams merged, forming a blinding storm that illuminated the heavens. When it faded, the ships were gone. No damage, no invasion, just silence. The council members stared upward, trembling. They didn't understand the meaning of it then, but the message was clear. Humanity was beyond vengeance now. They didn't need to destroy to be feared. Their silence was enough. In the following days, strange things began to happen. The energy grids across council-controlled systems failed one by one. Weapons refused to activate. Starships powered down mid-flight. It was as if the galaxy itself had been disarmed. And through it all, no human ship appeared again. No transmission. No movement. Just endless, suffocating quiet. The council leader finally collapsed at his desk, whispering to himself, "They didn't kill us. They took everything else instead." He was right. Humanity had turned silence into power. The galaxy had spent centuries laughing at human emotion, mocking their compassion and calling it weakness. But now, that same humanity had shown them the cruelest truth of all. Kindness withheld can hurt more than any weapon, and silence can echo louder than war. The days following the ambassador's final transmission plunged the galaxy into a darkness deeper than any war could bring. There was no invasion, no fleet of human warships raining fire upon cities, only silence. The kind of silence that eats at the mind, whispering through corridors and filling every space where laughter once lived. The Galactic Council's capital had become a city of ghosts. Streets once bright with color now stood empty. Great towers that once shimmered with light were dimmed, their energy reserves dwindling because the human interference had shut down entire planetary grids. The once proud council leader now looked like a shadow of himself. His silver skin had dulled to gray, his eyes hollow from endless nights of fear and confusion. Every report that reached his desk brought worse news than the last. Entire sectors of space had gone dark. Fleets that tried to move were stranded. Starships could no longer use jump gates. They powered up, but the systems refused to respond. Engineers said the network was being jammed by something unseen. "They've trapped us," one scientist whispered in terror. "The humans have locked the galaxy inside a cage." No one dared speak of retaliation anymore. The council was too fractured, too weak to act. Species that once swore loyalty now looked after their own worlds, abandoning the council entirely. The mighty alliance that had ruled the stars for centuries was falling apart, undone not by war, but by fear. Still, the council leader gathered the few who remained. "We must try to contact them," he said, his voice trembling. "We must end this before we lose everything." The chamber was silent. No one wanted to answer, but one old delegate finally spoke. "And what will you say to them?" he asked quietly. "You mocked them when they came in peace. You ignored them when they warned you. You laughed when they left. What words do you think will matter now?" The leader had no reply. His hands shook as he turned away, staring through the crystal wall at the black sky. "Then maybe," he said softly, "they'll hear our regret." The council sent out a transmission. A single message carried across every channel. It was simple, desperate, and sincere. "We were wrong. Please, let us speak." Days passed. No answer came. The council tried again. "We seek peace. We seek understanding." Still nothing. Then, on the 7th day, every screen in the galaxy flickered to life once more. The same human ambassador appeared again, but now his expression was colder, harder. Behind him, Earth shone like a distant sun, surrounded by the glowing ring structures that had become the symbol of their power. "You seek peace now," he said, his voice calm but sharp. "Where was this peace when we asked for it?" His eyes swept across the view as if he could see every frightened soul listening to him. "When you mocked our tears, when you insulted our compassion, when you called our kindness weakness, you shaped what we became." His voice lowered, almost a whisper. "We gave you chances. You gave us silence. Now you will live in it." As he spoke, the stars behind him began to shift, their light dimming in unnatural waves. The image zoomed out, revealing a massive array of ships orbiting Earth, so many that they formed a halo around the planet. Each ship pulsed with white-blue energy. "We have seen enough of your cruelty," the ambassador continued. "The galaxy called us emotional. Perhaps you were right, because what you see now is the anger of an entire species restrained for too long. And still, we will not destroy you." The council members stared, their throats dry. The ambassador's tone softened, almost sorrowful. "We will let you live, but you will never forget." He raised his hand, and the image flickered. Across the galaxy, stars began to vanish. Not explode, not die, just disappear. One by one, every system that had mocked humanity lost its sun. Planets plunged into darkness. No one understood how it was possible. Scientists screamed, priests prayed, soldiers broke down in despair. Entire civilizations were thrown into eternal night, their skies stripped of light. The council's capital was one of the few worlds left untouched, but they could see the darkness spreading closer every hour. "Why?" the leader cried out, slamming his fists against the table. "Why are they doing this?" A trembling officer replied, "It's not destruction. It's punishment. They're leaving us alive to watch." The leader collapsed into his chair, burying his face in his hands. The realization hit him harder than any weapon could. Humanity wasn't trying to win a war. They were teaching a lesson the galaxy would never forget. Days turned into weeks. Entire sectors became cold wastelands where no light reached. The temperature of planets began to drop. Crops failed, cities starved, and people prayed for a mercy that never came. Across the surviving systems, a new religion began to form, one that worshipped humanity as gods of silence and judgment. They called them the Watchers beyond the stars. Meanwhile, deep in the void, the human fleets drifted in perfect formation, motionless but alive. They watched the galaxies suffering in quiet observation, their ships like dark stars in the endless black. Humanity had become what the Council feared most, not monsters, but reminders. On the final night before the seventh sector went dark, a small colony on the rim received a final transmission. An image of Earth, peaceful and blue, its oceans glimmering under sunlight. A single message followed in the old universal code, "Remember how you laughed." And then the transmission ended. The colony's sun faded moments later. On the capital world, the council leader stood alone in the great hall, looking up through the glass ceiling at the sky. Only a few stars remained now, faint and trembling. He whispered into the silence, "We wanted to rule the galaxy. And now, there is nothing left to rule." Far away, unseen by any alien eyes, the humans stood on the surface of their restored world, gazing up at the dark void they had created. The ambassador, older now and weary, looked to the horizon where the dawn broke over the earth. "They finally understand," he murmured. Another voice, a soldier beside him, asked, "What happens now?" The ambassador sighed, his eyes reflecting the rising sun. "Now," he said quietly, "we let the stars heal. But they will never shine for them again." The galaxy lay in ruin. Once bright systems filled with life and trade were now shrouded in endless night. The stars that had guided travelers and dreamers for millennia were gone, swallowed by an invisible hand. The silence was complete. No broadcasts, no ships, no laughter, no music. Only the haunting echo of what once was. On the capital world of the Galactic Council, the silence had become unbearable. The great crystal towers now stood cracked and lifeless, their power grids dead. The council chambers, once filled with the voices of hundreds of species, were now empty except for a few surviving leaders who gathered under dim emergency lights. Their faces were pale, their eyes hollow, their spirits broken. They had built empires across the stars, enslaved worlds, mocked the weak, and crowned themselves as gods. Now, they sat trembling in the cold, praying for warmth from a sky that no longer answered. Outside, the streets were filled with people wandering aimlessly, hungry, desperate, and afraid. Every night, they looked up, hoping to see even one star flicker back to life. But the sky remained black. The universe itself seemed to mourn them. Deep inside the council's command tower, the last remaining communication officer stared at his dead console. It had been months since any signal was received from beyond their system. But suddenly, his screen flickered. His heart stopped. "Sir, I have something," he whispered, his voice cracking. The council leader, weak and pale, lifted his head. "A message?" he asked hopefully. "From who?" The officer hesitated. "From them." The room went silent. Every eye turned toward the console as the lights dimmed and the screen filled with static. Then, slowly, the static cleared, and a familiar figure appeared. The same human ambassador who had once stood before them in peace centuries ago. Now older, grayer, his face lined with sorrow. Behind him, Earth glowed softly in the distance, surrounded by the enormous silver rings that pulsed with gentle light. The human's voice was calm, steady, and low. "You asked for light," he said. "You asked for mercy. You ask why the stars are gone." His eyes, once kind, now burned with quiet grief. "You never understood. We did not take your stars. You gave them away the day you turned your hearts to darkness. We only showed you what your world looks like without the light you destroyed in others." He looked down as if the words hurt to speak. "We begged for peace. You laughed. We offered friendship. You mocked. We walked away, and still, you could not let us be. So we became what you feared, not because we wanted to, but because you left us no choice." The council leader stepped closer to the screen, his voice trembling. "Please," he said softly. "We were wrong. We see that now. We've lost everything. We've learned." The ambassador's gaze lifted, his expression unreadable. "Have you?" he asked quietly. Behind him, The image shifted, Earth's orbit filled with thousands of silent ships, floating like sentinels. The camera turned toward the dark galaxy, revealing the millions of extinguished stars, each one once belonging to a world that had mocked humanity. "We could return your light," the ambassador said. "We could restore every star. But tell me, what would you do with it? Would you share it, or would you rule with it again?" The leader fell to his knees, tears streaming down his face. "We will never make the same mistake again. I swear it. Just don't leave us in the dark." The human's expression softened slightly, and for a moment, it looked as if compassion might return. But then he shook his head. "You speak now because you fear death, not because you value life. Fear fades, memory fades, regret fades, and when it does, you will begin again. You will mock another, enslave another, and the cycle will repeat. That is your nature." The screen began to dim as the transmission started to fade. "No," the leader cried, reaching toward the image. "Please, help us." The ambassador's final words echoed through the hall, quiet but eternal. "Help yourselves. The light is not gone. It is within you. If you ever learn to see it again, the stars will return." Then the screen went black. The silence that followed was deeper than before. Some council members fell to the ground, weeping. Others stared into the dark, too numb to move. Outside, the people looked up at the empty sky, hoping, waiting, but nothing happened. Days turned into weeks, weeks into years. Civilizations faded. Planets grew cold. The galaxy fell into a long sleep. Yet far away, beyond the reach of any sensor, humanity endured. On the surface of Earth, cities sparkled brighter than ever. The oceans shimmered, forests flourished, and the skies were filled with stars untouched by war. Humanity had withdrawn from the galaxy not out of hatred, but out of understanding. They had seen what the galaxy truly was, a reflection of its own arrogance, and had chosen peace in solitude. Inside a grand observatory on the lunar surface, the human ambassador, now old and nearing the end of his life, stood before a vast window, watching the black horizon of space. A young officer approached quietly. "Sir," she said, "the galaxy remains silent. Do we ever plan to return?" The ambassador smiled faintly. "Not yet," he said softly. "The galaxy still needs to learn what silence means. When they finally speak in kindness, not in pride, then we'll answer." He looked up at the stars shining above Earth's sky, the only sky still full of light, and whispered, "Until then, let them dream in the dark." Far beyond, in the void where stars had died, a faint shimmer appeared. One by one, tiny specks of light began to flicker back to life, distant suns rekindling, as if answering an unspoken promise. The darkness began to lift, slowly, quietly, as if the universe itself had decided that the lesson had been learned. And in that silence, somewhere deep in the heart of the galaxy, the first alien child looked up at a new star and asked its mother, who brought the light back. The mother smiled sadly, her eyes reflecting the newborn sun. "The ones we called monsters," she whispered. "The ones who walked away.